everybody, and welcome back to the New Worlds podcast here at Capistrano Valley Christian Schools. I'm Mr. Jasper, the ed tech here, and I'm here with Mr. Mark Robertson, an English teacher who is leading a project culminating in these podcast episodes. We have for you today the first student-created podcast episode of the New Worlds podcast, and this episode is called Mothers of Materialism, created by our students Blue and Patton. And I want to ask you, Mr. Robertson, can you describe a little bit about what this podcast episode is about and what the things that Blue and Patton talk about?
Yeah, so in this episode, Blue and Patton describe how the society in Brave New World is based on constant production and consumption. So not only are the citizens expected to produce and consume constantly, but they themselves are produced on an assembly line and discarded when they are no longer of use to society. And Blue and Patton draw some fascinating parallels to our own society, which also has the tendency to see people as objects to be consumed.
Excellent. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to play the episode for you, so enjoy, and we'll see you next time on the New Worlds podcast.
Hi, I'm Blue.
And I'm Patton.
And today we are going to be talking about overconsumption and materialism in both the modern age and then also comparing it to themes within the novel of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a couple of lines and passages from the book that display materialism and consumption within the novel itself.
Yeah, so let me take over. We can see it early on when Lenina and Fanny are talking about this nice new belt that she got. Fanny was like drooling over this thing because it was green and it was just gaudy, like super, super not minimalist. It was very much maximalist. It was beautiful to her, and she goes on to talk about her belt, which is black and really nice. It's like patent leather. She wants this new belt because her belt is only 3 months old, which is like way too old. And there's a saying that ending is better than mending. So they would rather bring in new items and throw out old items. This carries on into how they feel about people as well. They're basically easily transferable. There's no real meaning or importance of human life. People are treated as objects, so if someone isn't doing the job up to the standards, then they could just be swapped out for someone else. Like, let's say a whole group of Delta morons or whatever aren't doing their job in their khakis. They can literally just be moved away, and a whole new group of 80 people can be made to do the same job the same way. It's all about usefulness, basically. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, to give some context, this book was written in the 30s. It's just interesting to see a lot of the parallels between the book and real life. So within the book, like Patton said, people are so expendable and they're so easily replaced for any matter of reasons, whether they're not doing their professional job correctly, or if they're not of the correct physical stance, they'll be so easily, written off. So just having all of that being shown in the story so strongly and so compellingly, it's just kind of interesting to see that versus what is happening today. And there is a lot of that same idea being passed around that people are expendable for multiple reasons. Again, if you're not good at your job, you're out, you're fired. If you can't afford to pay this or do this, you're not worth it or whatever. And particularly both in the novel and in real life, the same goes for sex. Hookup culture is a very, very prevalent factor of today's society, just like it is in Brave New World in the novel. It just kind of demonstrates how, obviously, the book explains it in a lot more of a dramatized way. Whereas in real life, it's a little bit more subliminal, but it's absolutely the same meaning of how human beings are expendable in multiple ways, particularly in a sense of sexuality, where it's kind of a one and done sort of mentality when it comes to sexuality.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that they view humans is a reality check for us because, you didn't date someone for more than 4 months and you had to have multiple partners or else it wasn't normal. I think a lot of being free in your sexuality nowadays, along with hookup culture, is basically the same thing. Just expendability and I'm using this person for a specific pleasure and a specific gain in my life, and then once there's no more use, I'm throwing it out. I mean, it happened to Bernard when he was like speaking out to Tomakin. He just threatened to send him to Iceland, even though he was like a super high up person in the like factory that he worked at. It doesn't matter who you are, because once your usefulness runs out, you're out. You're fired, like Trump.
We're cutting that last part. We're not mentioning any politicians in this.
Okay.
Yeah, and circling back to what you said earlier, specifically using the example of the belt, the green belt, that definitely focuses or highlights on the consumption of material items as well, which is definitely a huge part of not only Brave New World, but also this culture as well. So
Yeah.
obviously the consumption of humans is a big deal and not something to be taken lightly, but so is the consumption of materials and just materialism as a whole. There's a lot of great cultural references to the idea of over-materialism and over-consumption, including there's a song. It is called Planet B by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole album is a really cool concept album about essentially the end of the world as we know it on Earth, and the upper class civilians being able to go to Mars and colonize Mars, whereas the people that are of lower class are just forced to stay on Earth and die along with it.
Awesome.
So the opening verse of the song Planet B on the album is, the lyrics are, open your eyes and light the fluid, get into a petrol siphon, low on meals, browning fields, urbanization, scarification, population exodus, there is no Planet B. Open your eyes and see. So it's a cry for help, and it's just talking about how we are absolutely abusing Earth for her materials and her resources, and not only that, but also creating these new materials and resources that are also damaging the Earth, and eventually we're going to be left with essentially nothing.
Yeah, we've like commodified everything the Earth has to offer and that humans have to offer. Reminds me of in the book when Lenina and Bernard are looking at the sunset, and he's like, wow, like this is beautiful. And he's also talking about her beauty, and she's like, oh, this would be like the perfect time to go play frisbee golf or like Bumble Puppy. And she took like a beautiful day and just commodified it into something that she could do and like play and like get pleasure from, instead of just like finding pleasure in like the inherent beauty of it.
Yeah, that's a really good physical example of how they have essentially materialized even things that are intangible, like a sunset or like a
beauty.
Exactly. They have turned beauty into something of physical value that can aid them. And that reminds me of another song called Stinkfist by Tool. And the whole point of the song is, the whole point of the album is essentially it's Los Angeles falling into the ocean just because of how terrible everybody in the city is and how far they've strayed from truth and life. And they have a song called Stinkfist off that album, and it's all about overstimulation. And one of the lines is, boredom's not a burden anyone should bear. So with Lenina just taking everything she can in order to give herself entertainment, like you said, the sunset or the day is perfect just for another purpose. This song talks about how you can never go without any sort of entertainment or stimulation. So the opening verse of the song says, something has to change, undeniable dilemma. Again, boredom's not a burden anyone should bear. Constant overstimulation numbs me, but I wouldn't want it any other way. It's not enough, I need more, nothing seems to satisfy. I don't want it, I just need it, to breathe, to feel, to know I'm alive. So it just really shows our dependency on consumption in order to just feel human, in order to feel something, anything at all, is to be overstimulated in order to not be bored.
Yeah, there's a quote in this pretty far into the book, and it says, they get what they want and they never want what they can't get. They're well off. It's like everything is at their fingertips, so they never have to like want or like work for something and fail at it, and then they never get that like gratification that comes from something that you work hard for and something that's like a long time running. It's just everything is so easy and fast, and they never get to like put value into their work and value themselves and anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's nothing to give them value other than what society is telling them is of value. There's no God, there's no religion.
There's nothing that makes them feel.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no deeper meaning other than I have a job to do and I have relationships to maintain. And that's all there is. There's nothing more than seeking happiness in instant gratification with sex, with soma, with their job, with anything. There's no deeper search than what makes me feel good in the moment.
Yeah. when you have that, like, you lose truth and beauty and everything else. But, like, I guess you do gain comfort and a very, very, like, crude happiness. But, I mean, not much more. I don't think that those things are, like, worth risking for true humanity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the book, they've eradicated humanity. They've eradicated mistakes and sin, essentially. There is no moral code. There is no original compass of what humans are and aren't made for. It's just a new order that is, in its superficial sense, it's perfection.
Yeah.
Because there is no sadness and there is no commitment and there's nothing to feel guilty for because everything is free reign. At the same time, there's incredible strict order. Like you said earlier, you cannot be in a relationship with someone or be courting them, again, essentially, for more than 4 months, or else that goes across societal's code. And if you do your job poorly, again, it's totally just reiterating what we've said before about how superficial their meaning is and how essentially pointless it is, because there's no desire to search for a deeper meaning than what's being told to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that the book displays really well is the constant need for consumption of entertainment. A few examples from the book, Patton will tell you.
They go to, like, the Feelies, which is basically just a movie theater viewing of pornography, and nothing has any, like, moral value at all. It is just for pleasure. They sit there and they get, like, the feelings all over their body. I mean, they're fully stimulated. I think that goes along with overstimulation as well, because they never get any silence. They never get any time to think, but they like that and they want that, and they go after feelings at the Feelies. And there's always, like, noise going on. They always have the radio on when they're driving in their, like, spaceships. Like, they're literally in spaceships.
Yeah, and that totally links into the same thing today. A lot of people can't be alone with their thoughts, whether because it's repressed anxiety or depression or regrets or anything, whether it's not even a genuine actual mental health disorder, but it's just the idea.
Loneliness.
Exactly. The loneliness, the idea of being alone with just your thoughts. I mean, think about solitary confinement in terms of prison. That is just psychological torture for the pure sake of punishment. To these people, being alone is just absolutely unthinkable because it's nothing but punishment to them. And just relating to our modern culture, that's absolutely a true thing. People will openly admit that they can't stand being alone because it leaves them to think. And the more you ponder, the more you come up with anxieties and fears and or regrets or anything that you just did that aren't, pleasant, positive thoughts.
Yeah.
They bloom in solitude and they bloom in being alone.
There's a quote in the book when John and Mustafa Mond are talking, and he's like, I just want to, like, be alone. And Mustafa Mond's like, oh, no one's alone anymore. You physically, like, cannot be alone. I mean, you're always, like, sleeping with someone or, like, out with people or working with everyone else. Like, there's no time to be alone. And John basically, like, goes on to say that it leaves you no time to, like, think, because you're always, like, with people and you never get to, like, self-evaluate and, like, just think about the way you work and why things work the way they do and just everything, like, question the society and, like, the world you're living in. So they sacrifice, like, the loneliness and, like, the thinking time for happiness. Everything is just, like, in pursuit of happiness. And that's, like, why everything is, like, overly consumed and commodified and materialistic in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that just reflects modern society as a sense of, like, we have movie theaters and we have hookup culture and we have sex for entertainment and, any other kinds of distraction. Even if it's a quote, like, positive distraction.
There's the professional cuddlers now. Like, you don't even you, like, can get that, like, self-fulfillment by hiring someone to, like, cuddle you.
And same thing goes for prostitutes and sex workers in general. There's a very instant gratification there that can be so easily attained. And not to shame anyone at all, but that is just, it's undeniable that things have become more convenient and more easily attained than they used to be.
Yeah, and I think that's just, like, with modern times and as technology gets better and science gets better, like, things are going to evolve, but they don't have to go like Brave New World. I mean, I think a lot of people still appreciate, like, nature and things that aren't so intense or cool. Like, there's people that still have flip phones. Like, you don't need to have, like, the newest iPhone. You don't need to have, like, all of these, like, material items. And I think, like, the minimalist movement is kind of, like, a good way to show that. Like, people are actively going against the world, basically, like a more comfortable life and living with just like the basic needs, like a chair instead of 5 chairs and a couch and maybe a beanbag and a full on like setup in their house, you know? I don't need a huge mansion. I don't need to like have all of the like a $4 million chandelier hanging up that no one's gonna see. Like I just need like the bare minimum. Like material items shouldn't bring you that happiness that you search for. I think you should find that happiness in things that last. Even if it may not be people, I think like religion is a good option, which they've totally done away with in the book because they don't need it. There's nothing for, like, there's no struggles that they would need it for. There's no comfort that they need it for. People die, like, happily because they know that their body's going to be used for phosphorus and, like, go back in. So, like, there's no use for religion in that culture. But obviously, like, we don't live in a perfect world. So we still have all of that. We still have cancer. We still have suffering. We still have, like, homelessness. I think there are still, like, reasons to live a good life with, like, truth and meaning and beauty in it.
I agree. Yeah. I think you touched on something that said that you shouldn't find that much joy in materials and items. And I completely agree. I think that if at least for me, different for everyone, if I catch myself finding so much joy and pleasure and even sometimes validation in such material items, like something as simple as like a little, I don't know, a cute little chair or whatever, like, oh, that looks so great in my room. Obviously, there's no shame in taking joy in the simple things. I love taking joy in simple things. But
I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. But it's when you want like the Ferrari and you're like, this is going to make me happy. Or like getting the CEO job. Like, this is going to make me happy, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a matter,
like the extravagant things.
Exactly. It's a matter of, yes, absolutely. When like all of your validation and all of your joy and all of your work goes towards extravagance or decadence or lavishness that is unnecessary.
Nice words.
Thank you. All those kinds of things that are just temporary. Because no matter what you believe, whether you're atheist, whether you're agnostic, whether you're religious in any sense, regardless of what you believe, I like to think that every human being realizes that we can't take any of this with us when we go. Not people, not items, not money, not pets, we can't take any of this when our time ends here. So it's a matter of, regardless of what you believe, enjoying the things that not necessarily can be taken, but at least the things that can be cherished a little while longer than tangible items.
Yeah. You're not going to remember the chair in your first house that you had to have at IKEA. You're just not. You know, that thing's going to get put in like a warehouse somewhere and you're going to forget about it. And then when you die, your kids are going to be like, why did we even have this chair? We don't need like a throne in the house. And then you realize like, oh, I guess it didn't really mean that much to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other connections to make between Brave New World and what we've been talking about?
No, I think I'm good.
I think I'm good as well. All right.
We're signing off.
Thank you for listening to two white upper middle class girls discuss materialism and overconsumption.
Yeah. All right. Materialism vomits.
No, we're cutting that.
New Worlds is a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools podcast network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK-12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. For more information, please visit cbcs.org. Finally, if you have any questions or comments about our podcasts, please email podcasts@cbcs.org. Thank you again so much for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the feed to stay up to date with us.